Okay, let's see. Taryn, good afternoon, and thank you for being here.
Hey, how are you?
Great. We should have Gary coming along as well. I'm gonna.
Throw a jacket on so I match you.
I was a little chilly, and my other jacket was pretty informal, but I don't usually wear these. It was just hanging on the back of my chair. So, copy invite.
I don't want you showing me up, man. Looking all snazzy.
Better to overdress than underdress.
True.
Let's see. Let me send something to Gary real quick. He's just coming from vacation. So,
Do you want me to shorten the slides or give me a sense?
no, I just think my thought was we usually have two topics. Gary's got one, tax related stuff. You've got one that I think is very relevant and very important right now. A lot of employers should get out of the claims business is the short version, of course.
Right.
And so whatever you feel is appropriate, bounce around in those slides as you want for
Okay.
About a half hour each is what I was thinking.
Okay.
I'm promoting you now, Gary. Got my fourth quarter haircut on. Can't find time to go get my haircut. Okay, I'm gonna make sure I'm ready with Gary's slides. Gary can kind of kick us off and then we'll roll into yours.
There we go.
There it is. Got you now.
Hi, Taryn. Good to meet you.
Same here.
Okay, let me document save.
You're going to bring my slides up, right, Paul?
Just about to hit go on that.
Oh, boy.
Here we are.
Okay, Paul, you can do the intro and I'll keep it to 30 minutes or so.
It sounds good. I'm gonna make sure I have this thing. Just a moment. I'm gonna get the recording going so we can share it with people that registered but weren't able to make it. So I'm gonna hit stop.
Okay.
We're recording. I thought we weren't. Cool. Okay. I can tell by the list of attendees, quite a few of you have been to one of these before. Gary and I have been doing this for most of this year, I think, on a monthly basis, sharing some valuable information for CFOs. We've got a couple of great topics today and a couple of great presenters. You all have heard Gary quite a few times and me a little bit introducing Gary each time and hopefully asking some useful questions once in a while. And we've also got someone else that I'll introduce. I'll just do both introductions now to get it out of the way. Most of you know Gary started a group of CFOs, was a founding member of one of the national groups of CFOs, really well respected in his field, and I think a lot of them, and have learned a lot from him. And he has another great topic today around tax stuff. And then Taryn is someone I've grown to know through our work in the industry. And he and his partners have actually, a couple of them, I believe, took part in writing the individual coverage ICHRA rules under the prior administration, worked in Washington to do that. So really a go-to person for that topic. And more employers, I think, should consider getting out of the claims business, and they've built an amazing solution for that. And he'll take one of the two sessions today to share that with everyone on this call. So with that, I'm going to hit go on these slides, Gary, and I'll do my best to keep up with you.
Yep. Well, Paul, thank you. And I'm going to keep this tax discussion to half an hour because it's depressing, and hopefully share some best practices and some ideas. But also, I'm interested to hear Taryn's healthcare solution, because I think the only thing more depressing about than taxes for CFOs is getting the November 1st renewal with no time left other than to wring your hands and screw the employees with a bigger copay and a bigger deductible and blow your budget before January 1st even comes around. So let's talk about taxes today. Paul, if you can just jump on slides here. I'm going to trust that most of you know that all this information is going to be out on CFO Solution, the CFOsolution.org website, and there's supporting information. So these are literally a 30-minute flyby on tax planning and some best practices. I had some other topics in case Taryn wasn't able to join us today. So I'm going to run through the tax planning. I'll spend a minute or two on a couple topics at the transition. So next slide, Paul. What I'm going to talk about today is, do you have a tax plan? If you don't, I'm going to slap you on the side of the head. It's as simple as that. I don't read slides. So you guys can everybody can read this. You've got a budget, you've got a plan, you've got a couple year outlook, and they probably have a cash plan and a bunch of assumptions in there. But 90% of the CFOs in 50 or $100 million companies don't have a tax plan. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What is it and why you should have it? Next slide, Paul. Okay, tax plan, it's your document. You don't share it with people. Basically, what we're going to talk about is create an Excel spreadsheet. And you've got a couple of tax related items you start with, primarily deferred taxes, tax liabilities, your tax depreciation, your tax basis, and then build a tax plan. Because end of the day, cash flow is what you're getting paid to manage, and taxes are there. Next slide, Paul. Because I'm absolutely stunned when I talk to another CFO that you get surprised when your CPA calls you 3 days before the statement, the tax returns are due, and you find out you owe $500,000 or $1 million in taxes that you didn't accrue for, and you certainly didn't cash plan for. So let's just talk about, again, you've got your traditional financial statements. Just picture an Excel worksheet. Start with profit before taxes. The analysis I'm talking about today is put 20 and 21 there for history. Just regurgitate your history and build out that model. It's very simple. Should take you 10 minutes, folks. And then you're going to work through what are the first 6 months of 2022 look like, because you've got that information. And then you're forecasting the third and fourth quarter of 2022, because you're actually trying to forecast what have I paid in estimated taxes? What do I think my tax liability is? And now at mid-year, what should I be doing to manage that tax liability? So again, you got PBT, you've got a number for the last 2 years. Then you basically, and you can do it two ways, folks. You can add back your book depreciation and then subtract your tax depreciation, because we all know that tax depreciation is no longer a simple number. You've got 179 for another 10 weeks this year. You've got bonus depreciation. If you're not aware that bonus depreciation expires on 12/31, and you have anything to book that you purchased this year, this is your last chance to book bonus for the most part. So that's a change right now. But then you're going to start to talk about, okay, here's my tax depreciation for 2022. Is there anything I failed to book last year that my auditors have pointed out that I need to catch up because it's not, quote, in my 2022 thinking? Then start to think about any other deductions. The obvious one is if you're amortizing goodwill over 30 some years, but any other tax items you have. And this is the famed other miscellaneous category. If you set up your company on a tax advantage basis, this is a list of potentially 3 or 4 or 5 items that can give you some tax preference items. If you've done that, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't done it, it's because you didn't know how to do it or your tax advisor didn't help you. If you're looking at doing an acquisition, for example, or a carve out or some other kind of transaction, This is the time to get creative and figure out, are there ways to structure an acquisition or a sale of a business or key assets that can give you some tax flexibility and some tax optimization. Obviously, if you have NOLs to carry forward or you're sitting on deferred taxes, you basically want to put this as a question mark is, let's assume you have some NOL balance or other deferred tax assets. You basically, and I probably should have done this a little differently on this worksheet, skip above that line, create your taxable income, and then look at taxable income and determine, what are my state and city taxes? I'm a Pennsylvania boy who's got a business in New York City, which means I have to think about New Jersey, New York State, and New York City taxes. So for me, city taxes are very material and getting worse. So my point is, figure out what my taxable income is at the city and state level. Those are known taxes. In my situation, there are minimum taxes. So I'm never going to get to zero taxes, no matter how good and how creative I am. Whether I make money or lose money, I'm always paying taxes. So deal with the fact that I've got minimums. Now I get to a federal taxable income level. And let's say I'm in the 37%, let's say I'm a C Corp and I'm in the 37% bracket. Do I have any advantages such as NOL or deferred taxes or bonus depreciation or 179 that I can take now to get me into a 20% or even a 10% bracket? But when I talk to people about this, some people say, well, my goal is to pay zero taxes. Well, your goal is not to pay zero tax, because I don't mind paying taxes at a 10% rate, because I'd rather pay 10% every year or minimum taxes every year than use up my valuable tax gimmicks, tax deductions to reduce my tax from 20% to 10%, only to pay it back 2 years later at 24 or 37%. My point is, you've now got 2 years of history where you know what your tax rate is. Let's say your overall tax rate was 14, 15%. In my world, that's minimum, because I've got minimum of 10 to 12% in New Jersey and New York and New York City. Okay, so I've got a 10% tax rate just on the state level. If I have another 10% minimum federal rate, my effective tax rate's in the teens. Maybe overall rate 10, 11, 12%. I don't want to be any lower than that. Okay. If I'm at 24% or 30%, I want to start asking myself, is there anything I can do here on October 19th? If I do this model for 2022, and as good as my crystal ball is, I know what my first 6 months are. Got a pretty good idea of my tax depreciation and my other tax items. Just speculate, what's my range going to be on 12/31, and what should I do now? So let's move ahead, Paul, please. So I just walked through building, how you create the plan. A couple years of history, what you know so far this year, your forecast for this year. Keep in mind, when you look at 2020 and 2021, they are abnormal years. So if you're really trying to get a baseline model that you can use going forward, is remember about PPP, which was a non-taxable gift and screwed up your taxable income, et cetera. And then similarly, look at ERTC, your employee retention tax credit, because it was taxable, but it screwed up your income statement. So think through that, because end of the day, you're not doing an audit statement here. You're creating a working worksheet and a model. So now that you cleaned up your 2020 and 2021 history, so it makes sense to you and you can use it for going forward. Again, look at 2022. Look at what your liabilities are for this year and do the best you can to calculate what your exposure is and what your tax rate's going to be. And then before you get too confident, because I'm not a CPA, I'm certainly not a tax expert, is then review it with your CPA tax advisor and say, here's my model, here are my assumptions, what did I miss? And they're going to say what I said 5 minutes ago. Hey, you realize bonus is going away. Did you roll all the bonus into this year if you can use it? And if you can't use it, did you roll all the bonus into this year and defer the 179? Is there any CapEx that you might choose to capitalize January 2nd as opposed to December 30th because you might not be able to use it? Again, that's what you pay a CPA tax expert to do. He's not going to build the model for you unless you pay him a lot of money to do what you should be doing. And he's still not going to know enough about your assumptions. And my 2 cents of advice is I don't like telling the CPA everything in my creative mind because it can only come back to bite me. So CPA is my advisor, not my guardian angel. I don't share everything with my CPA. I get his advice. And finally, I basically look at if I'm wrong for 2022, am I high or low? Would it change anything I want to do right now in October? Okay. Now, finally, while you're doing this, because most of us are finishing up a 2023 budget and an operating plan, is take a look at 2023. I contend a good CFO when you're reviewing the budget is reviewing their budget through cash flow, including tax liabilities, tax exposure, tax decisions you're recommending, and you basically inform the CEO and the board that I'm in total control of our cash forecasting, tax liability, compliance. And by the way, I've reviewed it with our CPA firm and they totally agree with this. Then you've done your job as a CFO and a prognosticator, and you've built a model that you control. With all that being said, you go into year end and you go into the first quarter of 2023, you still have a little bit of flexibility of what you can book in 2022 as you close up the year, and you know about any tax changes that are going to happen after midterms. So again, whether you're a C Corp or an S Corp, I think you should be doing it. Let's talk about the next slide, because we've now talked about what our exposure is, what our alternatives are, keeping your board, keeping your CEO informed, keeping your CPA informed. Let's go to the next slide, Paul. Go ahead, next slide. My first line, I'm dead serious about. Paul, you're killing me jumping around here, but my first slide is serious. If you're surprised that you have a tax liability the week before your tax return, I'm going to make the bold statement, your successor will have his act together and he won't be surprised. So if you don't understand your tax liability a month or 3 months before that tax return, you're not a CFO. You're either trusting your CPA to bail you out, or you're sitting on a lot of cash and you can explain that you haven't done your job to your boss and they keep you around. So that's my sermon from the Mount today, is managing taxes, analyzing taxes and alternatives is your job. Next slide, please, Paul. A couple of things going on that you might want to think about. This is the first year you might have to think through the impact of inflation in 2022, in 2023, and if you're going to have a LIFO income deferral opportunity. We haven't had inflation for 6 or 7 or 10 years. So all of a sudden, if you're on LIFO accounting, you've been rocking and rolling with 2 or 3% inflation. You didn't worry about LIFO layers and deferral of income. Build a LIFO model. And if you don't know how to build the LIFO model with the layers and the subcategories, you cannot sit there and look at a $10 million inventory and assume you had 8 or 10 or 12% inflation across the board because your steel or your aluminum or your plastics went up by 8 or 10 or 12%. You have to build the layers. You have to build it at the detail for 2 reasons. A, it's so you understand it. And B, so you can explain it to your CPA firm so they can do the right LIFO calculations. So LIFO is the surprise lurking for some of us. I already talked about, well, let me talk about it. If you have state and local taxes with minimums, manage your profit, manage your taxable income across entities. Manage your corporate allocations, manage the way you analyze or allocate interest, or the way you share assets and share tax depreciation, so that you don't have a loss in one state that you're still paying minimum taxes as if you had a 10% tax rate. I'm always surprised where people that do their state taxes in a vacuum and they do it exactly the way they've done it every other year, and they don't look at the movement in your business or your assets or your losses. I mean, if you've got taxable income in one area and not in another, and you've always allocated accounts receivable write-offs and bad debt, you've just allocated it based on sales, look at getting a little smarter and throwing the losses where you can use them instead of just using a general lazy allocation. CPA says, gee, this looks a little different than last year. Yeah, we took the time to analyze, our account level detail. Absolutely the correct answer to begin with. The fact that you got a better situation, a better analysis tool in place, CPA is never going to ding you for a change in accounting methods for tax returns because it's what you should have been doing to begin with. Same thing for asset allocation, tax depreciation, using bonus. You don't have to take bonus everywhere. You don't have to take 179 everywhere. Take it where it has value. Next slide. Now, things you can do. Let's say you have a large tax liability and it's October 19th. Frankly, it's a little late, but you've got two potential credits sitting in your back pocket you may not know about. If you do product development, continuous improvement, lean, Kaizen type of activities, you'll qualify for the federal R&D credit, and also in 38 states that have a state flavor of an R&D credit. It's really the research and experimentation credit. My point is, you could get this done in the next 6 or 10 weeks to look at your trailing, your baseline, which means you need 5 or 6 years of history to do this. But with the help of a consultant, you could go back, and the reason you want to do this is you're allowed a one-time, for tax purposes, you're allowed a one-time accounting change on the R&D tax credit and a catch-up. So you could get 3 years of credit. You could get the 19, 20, 21 or 19, 20, 21, 22 tax credit and book it all in January or February of 2023 as a 2022 expense credit, and dramatically, basically eliminate your tax liability for 2022, carry it back and use it up for 2 years, and book the remaining as a deferred tax asset. Let's go through the T accounts. Why is that important? You can restate your tax returns for a couple of years. It's an approved change. You can actually use accounting alchemy to eliminate prior year tax credits. It does not affect your it doesn't affect your book earnings. It's tax related. It's an accounting change for tax purposes. And if you don't use all the credit you created, you actually put it on your balance sheet as a deferred asset and you create net worth out of it. If you're really creative about it, go ahead and create the credit. Don't claw it back. And I'm saying, if you're really creative and you've got a net worth covenant challenge with your bank, create the deferred asset. Sits on the left side of the balance sheet. You've now created an asset. It flows through to net worth. Don't bother restating 2020 or 2019 tax return. Let it sit there for future use, but it sits there in your 12/31/22 balance sheet as a boost in assets. That might save you a waiver or a default, or just pretty up your balance sheet. Now, that was suggestion number one. You can pull that lever now and capture 3 years of history, possibly 4, depending on your timing. Second point is, if you own real estate and you've never done cost segregation, similar situation, you're allowed a one-time accounting change to do cost segregation, which means you separate. Let's say you've got a $20 million piece of real estate in your books. Let's assume it's $2 million in land, $1 million in land improvement, and $17 million of a building, utilities, et cetera, et cetera. If you've never done anything about it, you're depreciating that over 30 some years. The roof will not last 30 years. The plumbing won't, the carpeting won't, the paint work, the parking lot won't. You get my point. Is you can break that into into shorter lived classifications, and you can retroactively capture all of your 7-year and 10-year depreciation. And if you, so you've been depreciating something over 35 years, round number, 36 years. You can now say, gee, I can go back to the day I bought that. I put that roof or that air conditioner in for a couple $1 million, and I can grab all the remaining book tax depreciation right now and book it as a tax depreciation expense in 2022. You wind up with a tax loss. You wind up with assets on the books. Or you wind up with an NOL. And again, you've eliminated your tax liability. You've cleaned up your amount of tax depreciation used going forward for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, depending on what point in the life you've done this. My point is at the bottom, you don't need to use this tax depreciation to wipe out your tax liability. Keep your tax rate at the minimums. Pay an 8 to 10% tax rate, because in your future, when you run out of goodies in your goodie bag, you're going to be paying 20, 24, or 37%. Now, that's what you can do right now and clean up 2022 and look like a genius. Okay. And we have people that can help you do that with a pretty quick phone call. We can give you an idea if it's worth it. We actually have one-page white papers on our website to explain a little bit more. If you export going forward, you can dramatically reduce your effective tax rate in 2023 by implementing an IC disc. It'll hurt your head. It's erudite. It's complicated. This is like you don't do your own root canals and colonoscopies. You don't do your own IC discs either. You get an expert to help you. But the short answer is, if you export more than $500,000 a year, you absolutely need to put an IC disc in place as soon as possible. If you put it in place December 1st, it will benefit you in December. Don't dork around with this, because it's proactive, not retroactive. Let me take a breath, go to the next slide, because I want to wrap up and not jump into Taryn's time. There are other things you can do. You can find tax credits in virtually every state for your new hires that can reduce your state income taxes. If you've never reviewed your sales and use taxes, it's worthwhile bringing in an expert to take a look at it on a performance basis. If you're not sure if you're paying a lot in property taxes, if your building's been reassessed or real estate's going crazy in your marketplace, get a property tax assessment done. 20-30% savings are common. These are all based on contingency savings, so it's worth bringing in an expert and either getting an opinion, there's an opportunity here, or you're in good shape. The beauty of the property taxes, that's a permanent tax savings on your real estate taxes. And finally, the last point I'll make here is 40 or 50% of small companies have not filed for ERTC. You can do it. You can reach back into 2020 and 2021. It's up to $26,000 per full-time employee. It's a pain in the ass to do from a pure technical standpoint. It's just arithmetic. It's the IRS has just made it difficult the way they want you to do it quarter by quarter. And even if you've received PPP, pretty good chance you can qualify for ERTC unless you were in a business that was mandated as necessary and would remain open. And it's still possible you could qualify for ERTC. Again, we have experts that can help you. Half-hour phone call. They can educate you in a hurry. So what's our next slide, Paul? Let's jump over that one. I was going to get into, and I'm going to skip this slide, but as you think about what's most important to all of us right now, including my own engineering company, is retaining current employees and recruiting new ones. So what I'm going to spend 1 minute on here is 2 minutes. 1 minute is talk to your employees, find out their hot buttons, listen. Don't just have an all hands meeting or a departmental meeting. Spend time communicating, which means spend time listening. They don't care about the company's problems. You need to start caring about their concerns, their problems, what's in it for them. Listen, and then somehow show them a little love, show them a little respect. What I'm talking about here is there's a hint, and I'm going to jump to the point, and this is rude of me, that most of you are as cold-hearted and numeric as I am, that you don't have empathy. You replaced it with another calculator or processor in your brain. So this is the time where the CFO has to be a little empathetic and caring, and find out what buttons your employees appreciate getting pushed. It might be a day off for their birthday. A lot of employees appreciate a day off to go work for their charity. Same thing with, there's ways to help people afford college tuition. There's a brand new program out that encourages you. It's called 401 Play. It's on our website. 401 Play is basically a way to help your employees plan for a family vacation or an anniversary trip or whatever floats their boat. But you plan for it in a couple of ways. One is you basically set up what us old guys would remember as Christmas card savings plans, where you save 10 or 20 or $50 a week out of your paycheck. And in December 1st, you have $2,000 for your Christmas gifts, your holiday year-end spending. 401 Play does the same thing for vacations with a really neat attachment. Number one is, if through 401 Play, your employees can find significant vacation planning tools, but also significant discounts. So they've reached out into the resort world, the Disney worlds, the place, the beach, the mountains, whatever, the rental cars, this and that, the excursions, and you can wind up saving, your employees can save a lot of money. The second way you might want to make employees feel good for not a lot of money is if an employee puts 20 or 50 bucks a week in their paycheck, and you might choose to put $5 in, just to show a little love. And if you want to be a best place to work and have employees say something nice about you at the water cooler, start to implement some special benefits that make them feel good. And they aren't expensive, and you're hitting a button you don't normally hit. So, Paul, I can't do 45 minutes of slides any quicker than 30 minutes. I will take a breath. Any questions, people? There's one in the chat room. I don't know what's there. I can't see it.
We had a chat between panelists, but I don't see any questions as of this moment.
Probably because I didn't ask if you had questions, because I wanted to cover a lot of stuff. As the listeners know, it's easy to reach me. My contact information's up on my website. If you want to know more about the tax stuff, the tax model, the tax levers you can pull, IC disc, glad to help you on those. And now let's go learn about the good news on healthcare, because I'm always waiting for good news on healthcare. So I'm going to go back on mute, Paul.
Thanks as always, Gary. And just a heads up for everyone, even if you don't get the questions out today or they come to you later, we're going to do a follow-up email after this to everyone that registered. It'll have easy ways to connect with any of us and get your questions answered, as well as links that drive you right to the site where all the information is stored. So, Taryn, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, great. I think if I'm going to hop on video, I think you have to give me permission.
Okay, I'll try and do that. And we'll see if it gave me that power. I might make you the host, and that'll give you the power to do it. There you go. Yes.
All right, there we are. You can see the fantastic hotel room behind me. So really appreciate this opportunity to talk about using some new tax vehicles when it comes to getting you out of the insurance business and just allowing you to focus on your primary business. So I'm going to walk you through a presentation, which is a solution that we put together, Health Access Solutions, but work with lots of different companies, with Paul and some of his clients, to really look at how do you solve what seems like impossible problems when it comes to your healthcare benefits. So Paul's going to pull up the presentation. This is going to be a beautiful coordinated dance between the two of us, because it's got some animation to it. So we'll be able to walk through it. So let me just, while it's being pulled up, kind of talk about why this solution matters. So one of the things Paul mentioned how we worked on some of the regulations for the individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement. And it's because that we were really frustrated by the lack of options when it comes to businesses really in the 50 to 1,000 employee space. You know, if you're super big, you have economies of scale and flexibility with what you can do. But if you're smaller, you're essentially running an insurance company at the same time you're running your primary business. So the biggest problems we solve, as you'll see, is really four things. One, high claims, unpredictable increases, and you're spending a lot of money on this benefit that at the same time, maybe you're frustrated by. It doesn't have a lot of impact on actual employees' access to healthcare and improved health. So we're now going into the third year of operation on this, and just some stats on this outcome. We have about 50 different companies using this structure. We have a 100% renewal rate of companies that have switched from a traditional group plan offering to this. As you'll see in just a second, there's a foundational benefit. 100% of employees get some coverage. So as Gary was just talking about of, you know, providing some new and different benefits to your employees, this really speaks to that. We cover employees in 29 states, so it's a really good multi-state or multi-site solution for employers that really struggle with that. And we're now going into their third year of renewals, and this defined contribution structure is really predictable. We have a 1% average annual cost increase going forward, and that's on the employer side as well as the employee side. So let me just kind of walk you through this a little bit. So for most of us, our utilization of healthcare, not the card in your wallet, what's your copay, but our actual use of healthcare looks something like this. Most years it's pretty low, every now and then it's significant. Another way to think about this is if we were to line up 7 of your employees, this is what their utilization of healthcare would look like in any given year. Now, the challenge is employees are spending a lot of money, as you can see, the purple bar, just in their share of the health benefit. If you just click, they're spending, this is for a real employer where they're spending about $200 a month for their health benefit. So it's costing almost $2,500 a year for that employee just to put their plastic card in their wallet. And if you click one more time, you'll see that their deductible for this plan sits way up here. And so you have sort of the Pareto principle in reverse, where 80% of employees are not seeing any benefit, but they're spending all this money before they even get to their out-of-pocket healthcare costs. And so what we want to do is show you a different way to provide your health benefit. So let me kind of walk you through this a little bit. Can you go back just one? Thanks. So we know that 1 in 20 employees will go to the hospital each year. And on average, that generates a $22,000 bill. And most health benefits are focused on how do you keep those folks from financial ruin, which is really important. But we know that half of all bankruptcies are due to medical debt, and most of those folks had private insurance. But at the same time, we know that all of your employees need primary care, preventive services, prescription drugs, and that cost is an issue there. Half of folks don't go to the doctor when they should or don't fill that prescription because of cost. And so what we want to do is show you a 3-part defined contribution structure that gets you out of the benefits business and shows you a better way to organize your healthcare. So thanks. So let me just show you what this looks like. The first part of this is a benefit that we put together and we administer. It's called the Health Access Benefit. It's an employee assistance program that is focused on eliminating any barriers to healthcare that your employees have for preventive and primary care. So I'll just quickly list these off. Has no networks on any of these benefits. It's direct reimbursement. Literally, employees take a picture, send it in, they get reimbursed in 48 hours. You can see any doctor, get reimbursed for up to 2 visits, or we'll pay a subscription fee for them to get unlimited visits, no copays through a direct primary care clinic. $250 credit for vision screening, $250 towards dental cleaning, sealants, fluoride, We cover all the CDC preventive services, everything from lab tests all the way through mammograms and colonoscopies. Physical health benefit that covers gym memberships up to $250 a year, and another $250 to support weight loss or nutrition counseling. Everyone gets a discount drug card, far better savings than GoodRx. I actually just used mine at Walmart, cash price $200, with the card $60. And then a mental health benefit, because that's a real issue. It covers everything from psychiatrists down to individual counselors, no network, up to $3,000 a year. And then if folks use tobacco and want to quit, we help with that. So this foundational benefit is provided to all benefit eligible employees. That meets the regulatory definition of an EAP. And it's the foundation that we then build on top of. And if you click, you'll see that we can build on top of that in two different buckets. First bucket is by offering medical cost sharing. So this is like a co-op for healthcare where members pay in and then the providers are paid directly for the care that individuals use. It's not the same as traditional insurance in that there's no network, so you can see any provider. But if you have a pre-existing condition, there's a phase-in period for coverage in that area, and it doesn't cover the behavioral health benefits that traditional insurance. So it's not for everyone, but it's a really great high-value, lower-cost benefit. And then if folks want to maintain a traditional insurance benefit, they can layer on a traditional individual insurance plan using this ICHRA, or individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement. All that means is that it's a pot of money from the employer, a defined contribution, and you can use it as an employee to buy any traditional insurance plan available in your county. And so it's super flexible if you have employees in multiple locations or working remotely. This benefit is portable and flexible to them. And what we'll do is we'll see what this looked like for a real company that made this conversion. So this is a layering approach, as you'll see. So everyone gets that foundational layer, that health access benefit, doctors, drugs, prevention. Then there's the medical cost sharing, which is a high value, lower cost benefit. And then if you need something additional, you can layer on a traditional plan. And what's really cool about this is you can do it down to the individual family member level. So let me just give you my family as an example. We have 4 kids. One has a complex medical condition. He could have just the ICHRA plan, and everyone else could have the medical cost sharing. So it allows you to stretch those employer dollars really far. So here's a real company. If you just click through, you'll see they were facing a 10% cost increase, which looks like a deal these days. But by moving to this layered solution, the employer saved $300,000 in year one. If you click again, it also was a savings to the employees. Employees' out-of-pocket costs just for their share of the benefit dropped by almost $700,000 compared to their renewal. And so this is a win-win-win. Employees are able to customize, you get out of the insurance business, and employees are paying far less out of pocket, and they get the benefit they need and want, not this one-size-fits-all kind of take it or leave it approach. Next slide. So the value of this is it's 3 defined benefit components. And so you decide as the employer how you want to trend that forward. And the savings over time are monumental. So this just shows the current plan trended forward at 10% a year versus this new solution at 2% a year. And you can say this company saved long-term more than $2.5 million. So it's really this set it and forget it benefit. And what's great about that is cash is king these days. Employees are suffering with high inflation. You want to be able to put as much in their pockets as possible with lower costs of health benefits and with freeing up resources to redirect them in more beneficial ways for your company. Next slide. So let's look at what this meant for the employees for this company. So this employer was able to make a free benefit for that first layer. We use a company called Zion Medical Cost Sharing. They're a nonprofit company out of Utah, as you might guess from the name, Zion National Park. employees got a free benefit, completely free for themselves as well as their family. The $2,500 is for their initial upfront response, out-of-pocket responsibility if per healthcare need. They could buy a richer medical sharing benefit if they wanted to for just $12 a week. Literally, it seems like a trip to Starbucks or something. But if they wanted a traditional plan, they could layer that on using that ICHRA funding. And that traditional plan was, we just show one example. There were literally dozens. But this shows you that an Anthem lower deductible plan was less than the renewal of their higher deductible plan. So they got a $5,900 deductible. That employee could layer on the ICHRA just for themselves for $35 a week, compared to that $52 just to get the current plan. And what's great about this is all the family members get that health access benefit, the doctors, drugs, prevention, vision, dental. So that's extended for the family members if they have the medical sharing. So this allows you to have a highly customizable, completely defined benefit structure. All of these are individual products. You are not responsible or attached to the claims of your employees at all. And you decide what the funding structure would be going forward. And as you can see here on the last slide, the how this looks to the employer on the next slide is the, sorry, one more. Or maybe it's not in there. All right, we can go back a couple. What this does is each of these components of the solution are just independently paid for by the employer and really flexible, so that if you as an employer have like a really lower participation in your group health benefit, then the components for the number 2 and number 3, as you see on the screen here, those are reduced just for the employees who are currently on your group plan. But you offer this new health access benefit that provides prevention and is really a great recruitment and retention tool. We've seen employers that move to this solution reduce the out-of-pocket cost for folks with family benefits by 10 grand just on the employee side. So it's really monumental, and it allows you to focus on the complicated business you're in without trying to learn and become an insurance company at the same time. This, if you haven't really explored the ICHRA, it just became available to businesses in 2020. It meets your obligation under the Affordable Care Act employer mandate to provide coverage, and how well you fund it meets your obligation to provide affordable coverage. So this is a brand new thing. I'll tell you, just moving from group insurance to an ICHRA usually isn't worth it. It's why we structured this 3-part solution, so that you could really get the benefits people need and want without having a really expensive benefit that works for the outliers, but might make everyone else, including you as the company, pay more than you really need to. So with that, that's a high-level overview. If you're interested in exploring this for your company, this is pretty easy analysis. Well, it's not easy, but it's simple on your end to put it together. All we need is basic information, a copy of your current group plan bill, and how many people are in what tier of coverage. And then we can put together kind of a high-level analysis of what this could mean for you. But this is a really great option, whether you renew your health benefit on January 1 or at a different time during the year.
Taryn, can I ask a couple questions?
Please do.
Sure.
First of all, is it available in all 50 states?
It is.
Okay. So let's say I'll use my numbers. I've got 75 current employees. They're all in our plan. Okay. Some are higher risk. Would anybody be denied coverage?
No, great question. So the 2 different components, the medical cost sharing has a pre-existing condition phase in. So if you have a pre-existing condition, there's no coverage in the first year, and then a limit of 25,000, 50,000, 100,000 in the out years. But for the individual traditional products, there's no pre-existing condition exclusion. You can't be denied based on health status, and there's no price difference based on your health status. So that's why it really provides a way to customize. A lot of times employers are trying to solve for the outlier employee or that unique family situation, and this allows you to do that, but at the family member level.
So just make sure I understand it. I've got somebody with a pre-existing condition, so they would have restrictions, but by using ICHRA.
Right, but not on the ICHRA.
But would they still, from an employee standpoint, are they still covered?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Is this an all or nothing participation? So if I've got 75 employees, would I do a broker record letter over to you, or would I bolt you onto my current broker?
You'd want to work with like Paul or somebody who's familiar with the solution, because it's different. And so you want to work with a broker that understands the different components of it. But you cannot keep a group health plan and offer it alongside this solution. It's a one or the other.
So you work with brokers. You've created this offering, whatever that means.
Correct.
Correct. So you're a specialist in this area. You're not a face-to-face broker. You work with Paul's network of
and other
reputable,
folks.
trustworthy, brave, clean, and reverend brokers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if there's somebody who's familiar with it, that's your current broker, then we could have that relationship. But we typically find you just want to have somebody that understands the differences, because you want to make sure that you're communicating appropriately.
So final question, I'll let others ask then. I'm about to work with a startup company.
Mm-hmm.
So we plan to go from a half a dozen employees to well over 100 within 6 months. Can you deal with a startup, or do they need a couple of years of history?
No, you don't need any history. So you can have 2 employees and get started with this, or 1,000 employees. So actually, what's really great about this is that it allows you to scale in a really meaningful way. And so it creates something that is this predictable, budgetable benefit. Whereas now what happens, Gary, as you know, is you hire an employee, and then depending on what tier of health benefit they sign up for, your amount of effective compensation could vary by 10 grand for that employee. This creates something that's much more predictable and affordable. So it's great for a startup.
And from their standpoint, it's a pretty low cost plan for them with great coverage.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's attractive for the employee / recruiting retention. But it's, I'm the cheap CFO who hates surprises, so it's good for me too.
And part of it is we structure it so that if you like the traditional plan you have, that you can get a similar plan at a similar net cost. So there's only an upside if it makes sense for you, but there's not a downside.
Okay.
We've had some employers that are attracted to this model from a recruiting standpoint because they can give more choice. They don't have to pick a plan for everyone, or 2 or 3 plans. They can give a lot of choice, and everyone gets some benefit, and they feel that's a recruiting advantage. We have this style of benefit for our own company. My personal experience is that I have 5 kids. I was paying about $20,000 in premium for a catastrophic plan, basically, in the small group marketplace. And when we went to this model, our costs went to about 40% of what they were.
Sure.
And that was true we happen to have a healthy population throughout our company. No one ended up going to that last level. They didn't feel the need for it. They can in the future if that were to develop, but they didn't feel the need for it. So as a company, our costs went down, our share of cost to 40%. So we just covered it all, and they don't have any share of cost, and they're very happy. So it's my mission to just get the word out and share this with as many people as we can. It's not the right fit for everyone, but it's definitely the right fit for many who don't know about it.
Last question, I lied.
Sure.
Sorry, I apologize. I said I was done.
That's all
right. Does it work? And I'll just use my case. The startups in St. Louis, I'm going to have virtual employees all around the country.
Yeah.
Any issue with network, et cetera, et cetera?
Not at all. So because the health access benefit is nationwide, the Zion, the medical cost sharing is nationwide, And then the individual insurance plan through the ICHRA is whatever's sold in their home county. And so it works great for diverse companies like what you're putting together. We run into this all the time where you might even have a company that has a home base and then, 20% of their population spread everywhere. Good luck putting together a traditional group plan that works for everyone. This is super customizable. And, if you have an employee in California and another in New Jersey or Florida, where I live, it works perfectly for it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Last comment from me. I don't see any questions coming up, but we'll make sure everyone gets a good follow-up email where you can ask them if they come up after, and you can easily request to learn more information about any of the stuff we've talked about today. Some of you know I'm on the news almost every day somewhere. I think 21 TV stations yesterday, and I'm going to be on XMs. If you can't fall asleep tonight, I'm going to be on XM radio talking about healthcare at 10 o'clock. But the reason I bring it up is because it causes me to do a ton of research. And one of the things that I've been watching in this whole game of employers providing healthcare is that the system pretty much piles on employer plans to derive all of their profits. I'm talking about hospitals, et cetera. And that is a scary reality. Rand Corporation just did a study. They looked at the data from 4,000 out of the 6,000 hospitals and determined yet again that employer plans are paying a lot more than all other payers, 224% more in their research. Although I think that's very kind, because really large employers have a different world than all the rest of the employers. I've seen it as high as 3 to 12x what an employer plan might pay for the same procedure in the same facility as a Medicare or Medicaid person. So when you know that that's going on, and then you look at the fact, stepping back from a real macro view on all of this, and you look at the fact that in 1999, 67% of us got our coverage at work. And today, 49% do. You have this dwindling pool of people that are having to pick up the tab and really fund the profits for the whole system. That is not a sustainable model. So for more and more employers, there's going to need to be an exit strategy from being in the claims business. And I think, that's why I'm glad Taryn was able to join us today. So thanks as usual, Gary, for your information. Thanks, Taryn, for joining us. Really appreciate you making the time, and we'll get a good follow-up message out to everybody, and look forward to seeing you on a future session. Have a great evening.